"Sit down here." And he, the closer relative, turned aside and sat down. And he, Boaz, took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, "Sit down." So they sat down. And then he said to the Redeemer, "Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. So I thought I would tell you of it and say, buy it in the presence of those sitting here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not, tell me, that I may know, for there is no one besides you to redeem it, and I come after you." And he said, he being the closer relative, said, "I'll redeem it." And then Boaz said, "The day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you also require Ruth the Moabite, the widow of the dead, in order to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance." Then the Redeemer said, "I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I impair my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption yourself, for I cannot redeem it." So I was thinking about how really Boaz, this whole redemption process, he is redeeming Naomi, but Ruth has tied herself to Naomi now, right? So he's also redeeming Ruth through this, because we had talked about how Boaz was really more Naomi's redeemer than Ruth's, but Ruth has attached herself to Naomi's fate. So in this, Naomi's fate would be her own. So why did Redeemer number 1 turn down the gig? What changed his mind?
It would lose him his own inheritance.
I also think it's funny how Boaz completely undersells Ruth. He's like, the Moabite, the foreigner, the widow, and then to reinforce that, of the dead. Completely undersells her. But this guy says, I cannot, because redeeming costs money, right? It costs money. This guy would need to give Ruth a son, and then that son would need to have an inheritance to continue on that line. And he probably cannot afford to both buy the land and give Ruth a son with inheritance. But Boaz apparently can, or is willing to, whatever that would cost him. So, closer Redeemer says, I cannot. This will not happen. Whether it's financial, which I think is the main part of it, or something about a foreign widow of the dead does not sound very appealing. So now in verse 7, now this was the custom in former times of Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging. In order to confirm a transaction, the one drew off his sandal and gave it to the other, and this was the manner of attesting in Israel. That's that. So when the Redeemer said to Boaz, buy it for yourself, he drew off his sandal. Then Boaz said to the elders and all the people, you are witnesses this day that I have bought from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech, and all that belonged to Chilion and to Malone. Also Ruth the Moabite, the widow of Malone, I have bought to be my wife, to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance, that the name of the dead may not be cut off from among his brothers and from the gate of his native place. You are witnesses this day. So he has done his job. Then all of the people who were at the gate and the elders said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. May you act worthily in Ephrathah and be renowned in Bethlehem. And may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring that the Lord will give you by this young woman. What's the significance of bringing up Rachel and Leah?
They're the mothers of the entire nation of Israel.
Yeah, like a second Eve of sorts. They birthed a whole society, a whole generation. So in verse 13, so Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And he went into her, and the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. Then the women said to Naomi, blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a redeemer, and may his name be renowned in Israel. And so here is the love story. He shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him." Then Naomi took the child and laid him on her lap and became his nurse. And the women of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, "A son has been born to Naomi." They named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now these are the generations of Perez. Perez fathered Hezron. Hezron fathered Ram. Ram fathered Amminadab. Amminadab fathered Nahshon. Nahshon fathered Salmon. Salmon fathered Boaz. Boaz fathered Obed. And Obed fathered Jesse. And Jesse fathered David. And we know who comes from the line of David.
Jesus.
Yes. So the love story here is really not between Ruth and Boaz at all, but really between Ruth and Naomi, and the love that Ruth had for Naomi. She went to such great lengths to ensure Naomi's well-being, her welfare. It actually reminded me a little bit, y'all know the movie Frozen, right? How it's a love story of sisters, not a love story of a girl and a prince, not really. It's the great lengths that sisters went to for each other. Kind of a non-traditional love story, I suppose. Frozen was, but it just made me think of the love that 2 sisters have for each other, or a mother and a daughter, how powerful that is.
The mother and daughter-in-law, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's true. Ruth did not go through all of this because she was super in love with Boaz and just was so excited about Boaz and his grain fields. Ruth married Boaz to redeem herself and to redeem Naomi. She loves Naomi literally to death and did all of this for her. The whole point of Ruth is to realize our need for a kinsman redeemer, right? We talked about this a few weeks ago. Excuse me. We are Naomi and Ruth, and Jesus would be the greater Boaz, right? This is salvation, honestly, more than a love story. It's a salvation story. I think it also speaks to the great lengths that we could and should go to redeem the people we love around us. Are we doing whatever we can to help them be saved as well? So a first question, I have a couple things to think about, questions. So the community was very involved in their marriage, right? If we go back to verse, whatever, the one we just read. Blah, 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 blah. The community was heaping blessings upon them. May it be like Rachel and Leah, the way that you birth a generation or whatever. The community was super involved in their marriage.
Verse 11.
Yeah, thank you. Blah, blah, blah. Yes. Verse 11. Let's see. Do you mind reading that? Verse 11 again?
And all the people who were at the gate and the elders said, "We are witnesses. The Lord make the woman who is coming to your house like Rachel and Leah, and the 2 who built the house of Israel, and may prosper you in Epaphra, the father of Bethlehem."
Yes. They, sure. They were very involved in their marriage. They're very encouraging of their marriage. That was very culturally appropriate for them. I think marriage now, especially in the U.S., is seen as super private. It doesn't matter who I marry. It doesn't matter how we get married. This is my marriage, not your marriage. You should stay out of it. But for believers, that's not true. I think in Ephesians 5:32, we see Paul recognizes this when he shows how the marriage between a husband and wife is symbolic of something greater. Your marriage has a community impact, the same way that the community was impacted by Boaz and Ruth being married and acknowledging that and supporting that. Your marriage has an impact on your faith community as well, and the greater community, frankly. What is a healthy marriage or an unhealthy marriage doing to affect the church body? Our marriage is not just for us. It belongs to God, and He's going to use that to give positively to others. It doesn't mean it is mess-free. Actually, it means quite the opposite. Jesus' relationship with the church is not perfect. His bride constantly is messing things up. But we can even learn from that. Ruth teaches us that the community is involved in marriages and has the ability to teach and encourage the marriage. Your church family should be trying to pour into marriages, and you need to be open to receiving that. Everyone mutually benefits from a marriage. A good marriage, a marriage on the rocks, whatever. We interact with each other's marriages in order to learn, to feed, to grow. So thinking, does your marriage represent Jesus' marriage with the church? When the church community sees your marriage, what do they learn? Are they learning? I know I have benefited. I have friends who openly have told me, super normal in their house, they have a standing marriage counseling appointment every week. It is part of their marriage. They are thrilled to have it. They are thankful to have it. And they're very open about it. Yep, got our appointment this week. Can't wait. And they really can't wait. They're so thankful for, it's a challenge, but it grows them. I've been thankful for women that talk to me about how they have learned to be a wife, because that does not come naturally for everyone. Just ask my husband. And not everyone grew up in a home with a healthy marriage. And so I've spent a lot of my marriage unlearning habits, unlearning things that I saw that I want to be different. And I've tried to emulate a lot of things as well from my parents' marriage that I thought were successful, but maybe don't work for my marriage. So anyways, all this to say, I have really benefited from people being transparent with me in a respectful sense. You know, what have you ever had an example of someone that used their marriage to teach you or help you? What lessons have you learned from the church body on marriage?
Is this a rhetorical question, or can we give an example?
You should give an example.
So Carmen's not in here anymore, but Ben and Carmen actually were at our house one time, and we were telling them this story about how we had an argument about a shower curtain. My husband wanted to get a shower curtain that was like a giant dinosaur.
Oh my.
Like, that's hideous. This is not going in our shower. And we ended up having an argument about it. And we wanted to talk to another couple about our argument and be like, why are we having these arguments? Why are we having all these problems?
Mm-hmm.
And they recommended we read this book called Love and Respect. And we bought the audiobook version and like just would listen to it every time we would drive to Anchorage.
Mm-hmm.
And it was literally like it was like a picture of our marriage. Like we were in the crazy cycle, if you guys
I haven't read it.
And by us being vulnerable and talking with them about marriage and hearing about their marriage problems and how they were able to overcome things and encouraging us to read a specific book for a certain reason, and us like really like humbling ourselves and wanting to learn and grow, it has completely transformed our marriage. Like we
Really?
have a completely different marriage now than we did
Wow.
years ago. Like an argument that would have lasted for 8 hours a couple years ago will literally last like maybe 10 minutes now. And we figure it out. And like I've learned how to treat him with the respect that he wants, even if I don't agree or understand.
Yeah.
And he's learned to treat me with the love that I need, even if he doesn't understand or agree.
Mm-hmm.
And we understand each other's responses to like struggle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the book talks about how women will lean in and they want to continue talking about the problem and they want to
Yes.
right now. Let's talk about everything. And the man needs to pull away and like go to the garage or whatever. Women feel like that's the silent treatment that hurts them, and like just the crazy cycle is just amazing to learn about. So I feel like you know, if it wasn't for this church and a lot of amazing advice that I've learned over the years from just different Christian women and their marriages, I don't know if Daniel and I would have made it. You know, we didn't get married until I was in my mid-30s and he was close to 40, and we had a lifetime of baggage and problems and parents that weren't a good example of marriage. So the church really has made a transformation in my life.
Wow. How neat. Thank you for sharing that.
That's a lot longer than I meant to.
No, I'm glad. I need to see the book and the shower curtain. Okay.
The shower curtain is really, really bad. I mean,
Is it there?
Is that the round one? Like hotels have?
it was just a shower curtain with a picture of a T-Rex on it with his mouth open and big teeth, and I was like, that's not going going in our bathroom. And my husband was like, but I think it'll be funny and cool. I'm like, I don't want a funny and cool shower curtain. I want a beautiful shower curtain that matches the art in the room. That I want the rugs to be the same color as the leaves. And have a
Oh, it's
vision,
so good.
you know?
It's so
And
good.
now he does this thing where he's like, well, it's your nest. You do what you need
Your
to do.
nest, yeah.
Thank you. You're
Yeah.
not the decorator.
That's the last time I try and help with decorations. Yeah.
That's the stuff you gotta learn when you get married, you know?
It's helpful. It's helpful for me to learn about other like what you said, like learning more about like this is viewed traditionally as like what men tend to do. And I was over here thinking, why is Jeffrey like that? Why does he walk out when I'm like trying to talk to you? What do you mean you don't want to sit for 2 hours and talk about this? We could deal with it right now, you know? And him and I have both learned how to, for him to say, we are okay, but I don't want to be hurtful right now, so I'm going to go sit in the car. And then I stay in the house, and that, learning that, we learned that through other people at Coopertown, talking to us in Nashville where we used to live, just saying like, sometimes they need space, or you might need space, and whatever your needs are, whatever those are, learning to communicate those, like, we're okay, but I need to walk away right now, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah, well, yeah. To prevent heartache, I learned those things from women at church telling me, like, you cannot force him to communicate the way you communicate. That's not how people work. Me and Tiffany might not even communicate the same way. We don't have to be married to have a fight, you know, like, but learning, other people have openly, I don't want to say openly argued, but not acted like their marriage is shiny and perfect. And that allows me to relax and say, so you guys struggle with this type of thing too. Tell me how you've gotten through it. Because clearly you're still married. Doesn't mean you've gotten through it, you're in it, you know. It's taught me that sometimes conflicts are not resolved. They are something you wake up every day and forgive each other for. Or you wake up every day and you work on. Jeffrey and I both have parents who are divorced. And so we're learning, but his grandparents have been married 100 years, basically. And so we're learning from all of those marriages. I mean, when you round up, we're learning from all of those marriages. We can learn something from each of them. I can learn something from the divorced woman, 100%. My dad is divorced and gives me some of the best marriage advice, truly. He says, I wish things had gone this way. I wish I had heard this. I wish I had done this. And that has been so helpful to me. And so transparency in your own relationships, in your own marriages, being willing to receive correction. And sometimes maybe Annie will say something to me and I'm like, how could she say that? But maybe me thinking, what was her intention? Was she trying to contribute to me? Was she trying to help me? Was she trying to hurt me? I don't think so. Trying to give each other the benefit of the doubt constantly instead of bristling at advice or correction. Those are things I'm working on. And I'm so thankful for women at church who have walked me through things in my marriage. I don't know how people get by without church women. So another takeaway that I get from the book of Ruth is that faith can be demonstrated by anyone. There are no boundaries. Ruth was a widowed Moabite, widow of the dead, Moabite. This story was not about being a good wife. Story could have been about what a good wife she was to whoever she got married to. But the story was about her compassion and commitment to Naomi. She is living outside of the norms that were expected of a woman. She did not duck and cover for the nearest shelter. She made sure that she was taking Naomi with her to safety, a future of safety ensured not just for her, but for them both. In doing so, Ruth ended up having an impact on the lineage of Jesus Christ himself. If it is true that faith can be demonstrated by all, and in pretty big ways, what are we to do? In what ways do we express faith and serve God? How can women play a vital role in furthering God's kingdom and leaving a lasting legacy? Not rhetorical.
And when you say legacy, I just automatically think of my kids. Like, that's my legacy
Mm-hmm.
that I'm leaving, and what am I pouring into them?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're going to be hopefully what's left when I'm gone.
Mm-hmm. So if you have children, what you raise up through your children. What else?
Say the question again.
Sure. If it is true that faith can be demonstrated by all, and in pretty big ways, a la Ruth, what are we to do? In what ways do we express faith and serve God? How can women play a vital role in furthering God's kingdom and leaving a lasting legacy? And Ruth was a childless woman.
Well, I think it was a perfect example of a legacy that Ben and Carmen left in another marriage.
Yes,
Just
yes.
being involved and being transparent and being vulnerable and being involved in each other's lives leaves legacies you're never going to know and you're never going to see, but they're
Absolutely.
just the same. It's true. Well, my children are a huge part of what I see as my
Sure.
ministry and hopefully my legacy someday. That you leave a legacy of faith
Yeah,
and how you treat the person in front of you.
absolutely.
So.
One of the things I think about is how we sell ourselves short. And I am amazed. You know, I had a young couple say to me recently, you know, well, you said this to us the last time you saw us, and I don't even remember saying what I said, you know, but they said, we say it to each other like every
I
single
love
day,
that, yeah.
every single day, and it's just like, it has just transformed how we think, and it's really encouraged our faith, and this went on, and I'm just like, I don't know. So we sell ourselves short, you know, when we're trying to just do the right thing, you know, just encouraging young couples, the vulnerability, you know, all of this. And
Yeah.
just, you know, just walking by faith. So many little things that we do are huge things
Absolutely.
in other people's lives that we have. And sometimes we'll never know.
Yeah.
But when they come back and you get a little glimpse in, you just kind of go, wow. You know,
Yeah.
I had no idea.
I love that. Some of the most painful things that have happened to me were a single sentence spoken to me. And some of the most wonderful things that have ever influenced me were a single sentence spoken. And I guarantee they were two different people. I guarantee both those people don't remember saying them. Both of those things I remember on a weekly basis, that painful thing. And
You know, I had that thought when I
Yeah.
said that. Like, I'm so thankful I said something
Yeah.
good and something positive. Because
Yes.
the opposite could have been true.
Yeah.
too.
And that's where I also try to remember, give people benefit of the doubt. They say something, you're like, how'd you get both your feet in your mouth? You know, like, but thinking, what could she have meant? And sometimes it was just venom. They just meant bad. And I then find someone that encourages me and inspires me and builds me up spiritually, and I share my heartache, you know. But I would like to say the majority of the time people aren't out to hurt you. They're out to help you, but maybe the way they did it was hurtful, you know. And so, but even, I love hearing that something you said that you can't remember is now someone's mantra for the rest of their life, you know. Like, I find myself, before I go into some patient rooms, praying, God, put the right words in my mouth, especially my hospice rooms. God, help me keep my mouth shut. You know, just go in there and hold hands and say, I'm so sorry. Can I get you a coffee? You know, like, don't explain things away. Or before I'm about to have an interaction with someone, I will pray, God, put words in my mouth and shut my mouth when it needs to be shut. But it sounds like God put words in your mouth that day and you didn't even know it. Yeah.
I don't know if you're on Facebook or if you read the
Oh,
story.
I am on Facebook,
about-
yeah.
Yeah, well, I just everybody. But the story about the couple who went to Africa somewhere and they had a child and the mom died, and so the dad was like, I'm done with God. And he gave the child to another missionary couple, and they died, and the child went to somebody else, this little girl, and she ended up in the United States. But while the couple had been that had the child, the little girl, while they had been in Africa, they had converted one little boy
Mhm.
in their village. And it's very emotionally for some reason, but anyway, the father had given up on God, and he went back to his own country, wherever that was. And that little boy ended up converting the entire village, 300 people, as he grew to be an adult. And then he came to the United States doing some kind of something or other, and this little girl met him and realized what had happened, what God had done in that village, and realized that her father's life had really meant something.
Yeah.
And she ended up being able to go and meet her father and tell her father, as an old man, how much. He's like, don't talk to me about God. I am done with God, you know. And she brought him back to God because he realized that his life had not been just meaningless. Yeah. And you just never know.
Yeah.
You never know what something that you said or what you have done or who you have influenced or what. And that's why God says, you plant the seed and he will grow it.
He will use you despite you sometimes too.
Despite you.
Yeah.
Because he had left God, and yet God said, no, what you did amounts to something.
Yeah.
You know, so 50 years he had left God, and then realized that, I mean, it was all God, but still, he came back to God as an old man.
Wow.
And, you know, I mean, how amazing is that? Even when you are not there and don't do anything else, he planted that seed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a story on Facebook, I'm assuming true life, but who knows?
Well, and it really shows that a